The day at the hotel was routine. Well, that was the beginning. I am Cindy, and I am constantly kept on my toes because I am the manager of the establishment. Neither the complaints nor the check-ins and check-outs ever stop. You would think I would have acclimated to it by now. This guy strode over to the front desk and gave me an irritated expression. His sharp scowl, slicked back hair, and sharp suit made him the epitome of refinement, slapping his phone on the counter and staring at me as if I had personally wronged him, all without saying a word. I can't stand how my room is right now. Who is to blame for this? Cold as ice, he lost his temper. I inhaled deeply and put on my most charming customer service grin. I apologize deeply for that, sir. The manager here is Cindy. I will attend to this for you immediately. He remained utterly tense, his suspicious gaze fixed on me. Hopefully, yes. The owner's phone was just going to ring. Remember who you are. Cindy, I murmured softly again. We can resolve this. Would you like me to compensate for the trouble by upgrading you to one of our finest rooms at no extra cost? On our way to the new room, I noticed that he was beginning to relax a little. As he scratched the nape of his neck, he sighed and eventually spoke more softly. I apologize for my explosive outburst. Hi, my name is Peter. I am exhausted from being on the road for weeks. I reassured Peter. No worries, as I unlocked a higher-level room for us. Everybody has bad days sometimes. We'll see to it that the remainder of your stay is comfortable. His worried face turned one of relief as he surveyed the modernized space. This is going to work well. He acknowledged the gesture with a subtle grin. I felt relief as well as I saw him relax. We began conversing as I completed the paperwork. Although he acknowledged that it wasn't as glamorous as it seemed, Peter revealed that he was a Bitcoin investor who traveled the world to enjoy the fruits of his labor. With a nod, I gave him the key to his new room. Yeah, I can totally see that. Well, at least you're constantly meeting new people. Isn't that great? He laughed. Indeed, rather similar to hotel managers who are adept at placating irate clients. That made me giggle. That's what makes the job so appealing. He stopped short of going to his room. So, Cindy, how about we get dinner at a later time? Your patience in dealing with my rudeness is appreciated. I smiled because I was taken aback by the invitation, but I could see he was being genuine. Certainly, Peter. I like the sound of that. So, that's how I met a hotel patron and had supper with them. From the Bitcoin market's highs and lows to our preferred pizza toppings, we covered it all. He was laid back, humorous, and, unexpectedly, unfazed by the daily mayhem that accompanied my profession. Following that unanticipated meal, I found myself opening up to Peter about my crazy day. Many more moments spent together ensued from that one dinner, which was surprising. It felt authentic and genuine, not like a cheap and easy relationship. We used to get a late-night snack or just hang around and chat till we were up until the crack of dawn after my shifts at the hotel. We wound up at this dive bar one night. At this bar, it felt like everyone knew each other, and there was never a shortage of refreshing beer. As we nestled into a corner booth, the din outside gradually subsided into a low hum. It was Peter's custom to sit there and remove the label from his beer bottle. He was thinking about something. As he glanced down at the bottle, he began, You know, Cindy, I've traveled a lot and seen a lot of places, but honestly, life on the road can get pretty lonely. As I watched him intently, I sipped from my drink. Then why do it again and again? Just get a place to call home, shall we? A little parched giggle escaped him. Get comfortable and do what? Obtain a puppy, put money into real estate, and cut the grass on Fridays. I am not that. As I shook my head, a laugh escaped me. That kind of predictability isn't necessary, you know. Nevertheless, I appreciate it. Giving up freedom isn't easy. Sitting in the quiet and taking in the sounds of the pub around us, we lost ourselves for a bit. Unintentionally, I began to divulge more personal details about my life than I had discussed with anyone in quite some time. When my parents passed away, my younger sister, Cheryl, and I were left all alone, I started nearly taking my own words for granted. In order to provide for us, I had to mature quickly. I reserved all actions for now. Her future, her education was on my shoulders. In a serious and attentive manner, Peter turned to face me. "Cindy, that's a lot of weight. With so much to do, it must have been difficult." "Yeah," I said, attempting to diffuse the situation. "It was tough, but you have to make the most of your circumstances, don't you?" Without ever taking his gaze off of me, he slowly nodded. "You've accomplished a lot for yourself," he remarked, his voice carrying an air of genuine admiration. "Keeping Cheryl's life relatively ordinary while managing an entire hotel. That's remarkable." This time my laughter was genuine. I suppose I was merely carrying out my duty. Peter drew forward, his eyes genuine and unwavering. "Do you realize how extraordinary you are?" I swatted his arm jokingly and said, "Stop it," but his comments touched me in a manner I didn't anticipate. I felt seen for the very first time in what seemed like an eternity. I shifted the subject back to him in an effort to make him laugh. "So where do you stand? Has starting a family ever crossed your mind?" Peter appeared uneasy as he fidgeted in his chair. "Oh, my clan? I don't understand. Suffice it to say that my folks and I have different opinions. Their kingdom exists, whereas my existence is lived on the road." My eyebrow was arched. "An empire, surely." I gave him a playful nudge. "Affluent, I suppose." He shook his head and smiled slightly. "Disregard the ostentatiousness. It's more like being bound and having high expectations." That night, we continued conversing for quite a while. I felt like I was really getting to know Peter as a person after we broke down barriers by opening out to each other. I was taken aback when the bartender began stacking chairs, a clear indication that it was time to leave, before I even realized it. While things were going swimmingly with Peter, he remained somewhat distant whenever we discussed weighty subjects, such as the future of our relationship. Everything changed then. Late one night, he was asked to supper at my place. Beyond picking me up on dates, this was his first encounter with my home. He surveyed his surroundings with an air of true wonder as he made his way around. "I really like this. Very nice, Cindy," he remarked, his tone betraying his apparent surprise. I spread my arms wide and laughed. "What, were you under the impression that I resided in a simple shack?" He laughed. "Well, I'm not sure. I suppose I hadn't really considered it. When my parents passed away, we were in a good position. I purchased this apartment for Cheryl and me after we sold our house. Now that the initial payment was made, it is fully ours." Peter, obviously awestruck, gave a nod. "You should be proud of yourself. I mean, seriously." We continued the evening by having dinner and then relaxing on the couch with a bottle of wine. At that moment, he revealed the shocking truth. "Cindy, our relationship has been on my mind quite a bit." My pulse rate increased. With an eyebrow raised, I met his gaze. "Oh, really? Also, what's been going through your mind?" With an expression I'd never seen before, he reached out and grabbed my hand. "Cindy, you have my affection. Trust me when I say I'm not interested in settling down. Yet there's something special about you. Being here with you is all I can think about." A wave of his words washed over me. He was recently very vocal about his desire for independence, and now this. I could tell he was serious, though, because I met his eyes. "Peter, are you sure? This isn't merely a conversation, is it?" Holding my hand, he firmly rejected the idea. "I've never taken something so seriously before. My love, Cindy, would you be my wife?" With profound significance, the issue lingered in the atmosphere. Thoughts flew through my head, but my heart was already set. I said, "Yes," without giving it much thought. "Indeed, I will with you." Our engagement happened in an instant. He pleasantly surprised me a few weeks later with a stunning, understated ring. It seemed unreal, as if I were entering a dream from which I did not wish to awaken. Without hesitation, Peter began making arrangements for the wedding. "Cindy, you ought to have something very remarkable." He proposed the idea of a wedding that would be remembered for a long time as we discussed potential locations and costs one night. But I was a little worried when he mentioned the budget. "I'm well connected," Peter boasted triumphantly. "The details will be taken care of by myself. I will arrange for our honeymoon to be at the most opulent hotel on earth if you give me the money, say $60,000. We can then look at purchasing a home jointly." I hesitated when I heard the sum. Seeing the joy on his face convinced me to overcome my reluctance, even though it was a lot, almost all of my possessions. It was clear he was overjoyed and confident. "All right, Peter, I trust you, so please do what you think is best," I said before transferring the funds to his account and giving him control of the planning process. It warmed my heart to see him jump into the wedding planning. Even though he seemed to have materialized out of nowhere, this man now seemed destined to be a part of my life from the start. With a grin on my face and an attitude of gratitude for how well things was working out, I would go to sleep each night. I thought it was high time for Peter to meet Cheryl, my sister, as the wedding preparations progressed. Although she had a tendency to be overly direct at times, her viewpoint was significant because she was the sole remaining member of my family. Cheryl was a waitress at a nearby diner, so we planned to meet there. The bell hung jingling over the door as we entered, and Cheryl recognized us immediately. She beckoned to us as her expression brightened. She grinned broadly and yelled out, "Hey, sis." With a mischievous twinkle in her eye, she turned to Peter, "And I've heard amazing things about you. Your renown as a fiancé." With that endearing grin on his face, Peter reached out to her. "You must be the stunning sister everyone has been raving about. Could you possibly be twins?" Feeling a mix of pride and slight embarrassment, I couldn't help but roll my eyes. Very well. You should remove the charisma, sir." With a mischievous grin, Cheryl leaned closer and giggled. "Are you really that wealthy, Peter?" My face flushed with heat. "Cheryl, what a thrill!" Infuriated by her forthrightness, I let out a hiss. No matter what, she could always find a way to annoy me. Peter, though, shrugged it off and simply laughed. A silky, "Well, I've done all right," was his response. However, Cindy has a point. The love is more important than the money. An eyebrow was raised by Cheryl, who was obviously impressed. "An expert negotiator, huh? I like him." In the weeks that followed, Peter was the ideal fiancé, charming, attentive, and relentless in his pursuit of making me feel like the center of his universe. It was a comfort that he handled Cheryl's friendly taunting with ease. In the midst of all the wedding preparations, my closest friend, Lauren, and I went dress shopping. A bride's paradise, the store brimming with satin, lace, and silk. In front of the mirror, as I was zipped into a stunning gown, the gravity of the situation began to sink in. I couldn't believe it. Out of the adjacent booth came a sound that I knew all too well. A laugh. I peered curiously behind the curtain and saw Cheryl, dressed for her wedding, whirling in front of the mirror. Asking, "Cheryl?" I couldn't contain my shock and let out a gasp. "Why are you wearing a wedding dress? What are you even doing?" Attempting to process what she had just said, I fixed my gaze on her. "Are you for real? Would you like to share anything with me?" With a mix of curiosity and worry, I inquired. With a wry but distant smile, Cheryl shrugged a little. "Let it be a surprise," she added, her tone innocent yet hinting at something deeper. Observing the conversation, Lauren let out a laugh. "Seems like someone's been bitten by the wedding bug." Assuming Cheryl was simply being her typical mischievous self, we all laughed it off. As I adjusted the garment in front of my mirror and returned my attention to my own wedding day, the memory of Cheryl in her dress lingered. I pretended it didn't matter and ignored it. Before something unexpected happened, the day began normally. Peter hurriedly departed after breakfast, muttering something about a crucial meeting he must attend. Leaving his phone on the coffee table, he was in a hurry. A few while after he left, it began to buzz incessantly. My insatiable curiosity eventually won out. I assumed it might be a work or wedding-related emergency. Probably just a buddy checking in, I whispered to myself as I picked up the phone. Personally, I thought it was a little careless that Peter had never used a password. Perhaps that was my initial indication. Looking back, my inbox was overwhelmed with messages from a single contact, Cheryl, the moment the screen came to life. My pulse quickened. Why is he always messaging Cheryl? Thinking this, I reminded myself not to make hasty judgments. Nonetheless, I couldn't shake the sensation and read the notes. The first one landed squarely on my face. I long to spend the rest of my life by your side, Cheryl had penned. I don't want Cindy by my side. I want you. Reading Peter's response made my pulse quicken. My love, soon. We only require a bit more time to continue playing along. It's quite comical how stupid she is. As I continued scrolling, the impact of each message grew increasingly profound. All they could think about was the wedding and how they would use my money to start their life together after I left. Finally, the bombshell. Cheryl was carrying Peter's child. I felt a wave of queasy as the room spun around me. The little sister I had literally nurtured and helped financially was betraying me in the most heinous way imaginable. This whole treachery was being orchestrated by Peter, the man who had sworn to love and protect me. Peter returned an hour later, appearing embarrassed. "Hey, honey, did you see my phone?" he inquired, bending down to plant a kiss on my cheek as if nothing had happened. Just like I had done innumerable times at the hotel to mask my annoyance, I put on an artificial smile. I gently told him, "You left it here," and gave it to him. "You seem to be losing your footing and possibly losing your lifeline." As he accepted it, he likely checked his messages to make sure he hadn't missed anything important. Still, I caught a glimpse of the slight satisfaction that must have crossed his face as he appeared to have escaped harm. I was already plotting how to confront both of them, and he had no idea that I had witnessed everything. Attempting to decipher any indication that he could suspect my knowledge of the truth, I observed him intently. However, Peter, entangled in his own deceit, was completely ignorant. My hands clenched as I felt him laugh at something on his phone screen. "Peter, feel free to laugh it up. Take advantage of this opportunity while you have it." As we laid in bed later that night, he was beaming, planning our future together. "Cindy, it will turn out beautifully. This union, our existence. You'll notice." With love and betrayal entwined in my emotions, I faced him. A soft whisper, "I'm sure it will be," from my lips as I allowed him to come closer. "Indy, faultless." He nodded out, but I remained wide awake, my thoughts racing with plans. I refused to let myself become a pawn in this sick game. I would put on a spectacle they would never forget if they asked me to. Just a little longer of the loving fiancé act was required of me first. At long last, the big day was here, the wedding, and the platform for the performance of a lifetime had come. Guests sat in the flower-filled grand hall, whispering eagerly as if they had no idea what drama was about to happen. Just as we were about to exchange vows at the altar, the doors at the back of the hall swung open. Wearing her own wedding gown, Cheryl strode down the aisle with an air of complete dominance. With a dramatic flourish, she strode up to us and shoved me aside, and the onlookers gasped and turned to observe her. It was her, not you, Cindy, who deserved to be here, she declared with a voice that echoed through the hall. "His child will be born to me." She looked across to Peter. "Inform her, spread the word." Peter severed our grip and let forth a loud, hideous laugh that resounded throughout the room. "Much obliged, Cindy, for arranging such a magnificent nuptial ceremony. My sister and I will love it." As astonishment crossed the guests' features as they let out a gasp, with a satisfied expression on his face, Peter went on. "Cindy, why don't you sit down? You are invited to enjoy the show." I simply smiled and gracefully stepped back, even if his comments were meant to break me. My voice remained steady as I said, "Certainly. I am absolutely thrilled about it." I strode away, denying them the scene they had anticipated, and their arrogant grins melted into a hint of bewilderment. Like a bystander in my own life, I sat down, crossed my legs, and watched the chaos unfold. Just as Peter and Cheryl were about to face the priest and exchange bows, another interruption cut them off. A furious-looking older woman stumped down the aisle. As her voice broke the stillness, she yelled out, "Peter," and I noticed that Peter's cheeks were turning white. As the woman walked furiously toward the altar, the place fell into eerie silence. She proclaimed, her voice quivering with anger, that I am his wife and the mother of his child, something he conveniently forgot along with the vows he made to me. Legs that appeared to be giving way beneath Cheryl appeared to be devoid of color. In a wordless cry for aid, she glanced between Peter and the woman before returning her gaze to me. Nothing more needed to be said, though. As my life fell apart in front of my eyes, I did nothing more than sit back and let the mayhem unfold. I felt an odd sense of liberation. I rose to my feet, my voice clear and unruffled amidst the din. "I also have a little surprise in store for everyone," I declared, my voice measured and decisive. "Besides being a cheater, Peter is also broke. He's in over his head in debt, according to a private investigator. He has been robbing from his own family, which is the worst part, and his investments have collapsed." Shock and whispers filled the room, creating an electric atmosphere of scandal. Peter's wife, who was now irate beyond description, looked over at Cheryl. "And you," she said as she drew near my sister. "How outrageous!" As the gravity of her treachery hit her, Cheryl staggered backward, her eyes watering. An odd combination of contentment and melancholy washed over me as I watched, even though it caused a hollow aching inside. Seeing everything unravel seemed like justice after weeks of anguish and careful planning. With an abrasive and relentless tone, Peter's wife persisted. "You really believe he's going to start a family with you after he's abandoned us with nothing? Be awake, my dear." Ideal wedding for Cheryl was turning into a nightmare, and she sobbed as a result. In an attempt to salvage the situation, Peter attempted to utter a word, but his wife struck him across the face, causing a startled hush as the hall resounded with the sharp snap of the slap. The doors swung open once more as folks were starting to take it all in. Once again, it was Peter's folks. Their expressions betrayed their dismay and disappointment as they entered. A severe-looking man in a sharp suit, his father surveyed the room before fixing his intense stare on Peter. In a voice that roared and silenced the onlookers, his father said, "I am completely embarrassed of you, Peter." His unwavering stare seemed capable of inflicting regret upon his son. A fragile woman holding a handkerchief, his mother's face betrayed her emotions as she sobbed. "How on earth could you, my son?" Tears streamed down her face. "We did not bring you up this way. It is absolutely unacceptable to deceive these women." Peter stood there, his charisma dwindling as the public disdain for his family weighed heavily on him. He was about to say something, perhaps to clarify, when his father abruptly silenced him. "You will never again be remembered as an ancestor of this family. Think of yourself as bereft of an inheritance." Once again, the audience went absolutely wild, with many whipping out their phones to record the spectacular collapse of my once perfect wedding. I brought Peter to court in the weeks that followed. I went to court to get back the $60,000 he had stolen from me. I had naively put all my faith in Peter and given him the wedding money. However, the judge found in my favor due to the clear evidence I presented, and Peter was ordered to reimburse every amount. Not long after that, Peter's wife sued him for wrongful imprisonment, mental suffering, and alimony for their daughter. As I witnessed Peter suffer the repercussions of his deceit, I was filled with a mix of emotions as I attended each court hearing. Cheryl, who had nearly destroyed me, was standing by his side, which caught me off guard. She accosted me outside the courtroom one day, her expression betraying her hurt and indignation. "Both he and I love one another, Cindy. No matter what you or anybody else thinks, we're going to get through this," she continued, her voice quivering but determined. The sister I had once cared for so completely now seemed like an alien to me as I stared at her. "Is it love? What do you mean by love?" My voice was heavy with skepticism as I asked. He took advantage of Cheryl and myself. "Come closer. He deceives." "But he's changed," she adamantly stated, her voice quivering. "I'll get him to change. You failed to perceive any redeeming qualities in him." A sour chuckle slipped out of my mouth as I shook my head. "Is it up to par? Cheryl, he's completely lacking in virtue. You're simply another victim of his deceptive artistry." I felt a great burden fall on me as I strode away. A toll had been taken by the deceit, treachery, and interminable legal disputes. Still, something about the situation felt resolved. The man who had previously assured me of his affection had revealed his actual character, and I had exposed him for it. Instead of a dramatic final, Peter quietly resigned himself to his fate as he disappeared from town, leaving behind a wake of unfulfilled promises and outstanding bills. He had paid off his obligations to me and his legal wife before he vanished, maybe in an effort to start over. My sister, who was now pregnant and living alone, was the worst problem he left behind with Cheryl. Cheryl turned up at my flat a couple of weeks following Peter's disappearance. It had been since the courtroom scene that I had last laid eyes on her. Her once confident self now stood there, her gaze lowered. "Cindy, I am in desperate need of assistance," she whispered. "He dumped me, and now I'm going to be a mother to his child. My possessions are non-existent. Had I been the one to raise her, I might have thrown open the door and welcomed her return without hesitation. However, there was just too much pain and too much trauma to quickly forget." I whispered, "You have the apartment," maintaining a strong but friendly tone. "Plus, the baby will be yours. There's progress. Listen up, Cheryl. You ain't no street person. There is hope for you." I whispered, "You have the apartment," maintaining a strong but friendly tone. "Plus, the baby will be yours. There's progress. Listen up, Cheryl. You ain't no street person. There is hope for you." "However, Cindy, I am financially strapped. I need help with the bills and the baby," she implored, her eyes filled with anguish. Although it pained me to see her in this state, I was firm in my resolve and shook my head in protest. "Your decision is final, Cheryl. You need to whip up a new one right now. You are capable of solving this problem." I shut the door behind her as she glanced at me, her eyes betraying her growing awareness. It was clear to me that she needed to discover her inner power, just like I had. "I had to remain composed when my parents passed away," I stated with a steady voice. "And I had to dig deep when you duped me." In a fit of sobbing, Cheryl hid her face in her hands and shook uncontrollably. "I was never intending to cause you any harm. I believed I was bewitched. Yes, I did." My response was unwavering. "Love doesn't make you betray your family. You can't claim to love me if you turned a blind eye to my shame. Staying away from him or telling me the truth before everything came apart would have been your way of showing me that you loved me." With a look of desperation in her eyes, Cheryl glanced upwards. "Is it then? Am I to believe that you will simply reject me?" "Yes," I responded with a firm tone. "Just as I took care of you, you will take care of your child when you leave this place." With one more resounding smash, I turned around and returned to my flat, where I slammed the door, therefore erasing her cries. I knew it was essential, but it was the hardest thing I had ever done. Life went back to the peaceful monotony. I had forgotten how much I had missed it after that day. The sense of autonomy that had always defined me was gradually restored as I dove headfirst back into my job, revived long-forgotten interests, and rediscovered my passions. Regarding Cheryl, I was informed by acquaintances of hers that she gave birth to a daughter. They claimed she was doing okay, making it on her own. My deepest wish was that she would discover a purpose and blossom into a formidable mother, something she had failed to do while growing up.